This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 95 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's a fun episode where we celebrate all the mistakes we make along the way when we travel, because mistakes are good, really, right? So today's episode is titled Travel Mishaps and Misjudgments. They happen to the best of us, and they happen often, in my experience anyway. But they always make for a good story. So that's the best part about these kinds of mishaps. Now, before we get on to those stories from some great guests today, I want to tell you about our new sponsor. So this week's episode is sponsored by travel writer Alistair McGuinness. Now, like me, he has a big travel addiction, but unlike me, he has published several great books about his adventures. He's about to release the third book in the Half a World Away series, and it's titled Half a World Away in Africa, Kilimanjaro to Cape Town on an overland truck. And to fit the theme of this mishap episode, I can tell you that trip described in that book came about because his first attempt to climb Kilimanjaro included a few mishaps, including the fact that he did the climb wearing borrowed pink tracksuit bottoms. That's my favourite fact so far. So Alistair has also published books about his ride from John O'Groats to Land's End on a borrowed bicycle, and travels in South America and Australia. So he has a really lovely style. It's kind of full of both fun and emotion. They're the kind of travel books you want to read, whether they're about a destination you've been to or want to go to, or don't even want to go to. It's just one of those enjoyable reads. So you can find Alistair's books on Amazon or via his website, which is at alistairmcguinness.com. And I'll leave links in the show notes so you can easily find both those books on Amazon and through his website. And of course, the show notes are at notaballerina.com/95. So, on to the mishaps and misjudgments. Now, I've already had a mishap even just recording this podcast, because I started off and I don't know what's up today. The weather, the season, I don't know. But the birds in the trees in my backyard were crazy, crazy, crazy loud to the point where you could barely hear me. So I had to scrap that beginning and we've started again. So fingers crossed they've quietened down now. I'm hoping so. They're Australian ravens at the moment. We often call them crows, but they're technically ravens. I get all kinds of birds through here because it's opposite a park, and so home to many different kinds of funny birds around here. But today it was the ravens. Oh my goodness, they were having a real yell. So hopefully they'll stay quiet for the rest of the podcast. And on to my first guests. So the first guests today are Matt and Marilyn from Words with Winos. And they very honestly told me about one of the most major mishaps of their travelling career. And it was something that happened right at the start.
So this is going back to 2014. We just graduated college and we just decided that we wanted to go to Thailand and teach English because we didn't want to be a part of the 9-to-5 career path in the United States. So we were just kind of browsing the internet and we found out that you need a TEFL certificate, which is teaching English as a foreign language certificate, and it helps you get jobs abroad to teach English. So we were trying to figure out how to get this certificate and get jobs. So what we ended up doing was we found this group called Island TEFL, and what they do is they offer you certificates, and after you complete an online course. And then when you arrive in Thailand, they give you an orientation and then a job placement. So we were like, okay, this is great. What? Great. All right. Everything's all thrown in, whatever. We don't care. And then we found out that we had to pay almost $1,000 US dollars each. And we were like, oh, naive kids. We were just like, okay, well, I guess this is pretty much the case everywhere we go. And that's just about that. So we paid. We took the online course for a couple of months before we went to Thailand. And we were told we would get, our TEFL certificate when we got there. Mm-hmm. So we get there and we're a part of the orientation with the group. And, it goes on and they're kind of not very legitimate. And Then eventually they tell us that we're not getting our certificates. And we're like, okay, well, we worked very hard for those and we paid a lot of money. So they never gave us those. And a couple weeks later, we found out that they were never going to give us jobs. So we were just kind of stranded in Thailand after being there for a couple weeks, and we were jobless and certificateless, and we were running low on cash, and we were just like, oh my God, what do we do? And this is also the first time ever being abroad.
You poor things.
This is kind of like a massive mistake on our part. So basically, like, the takeaway here is that you should never, ever, ever pay an agency to place you for a job. TEFL certificates do cost money, but you should always make sure ahead of time that they are very legitimate.
Yes, exactly. Check them out thoroughly. Yes. Oh, no.
Right.
Oh, so what did you end up doing? How did you fix this mistake?
Well, at this point, we were stranded, we were running out of money, and we actually had to ask our parents for some money to help us out. We really didn't want to do that at all, but it was our first time ever traveling. We were in a foreign country, we were very culture shocked, nervous, and we asked them, they gave us a little money to help us out. And eventually, we just went on Craigslist, and we found a job on there within like hours. We found this one job where this agent was looking for 2 English teachers in this city called Chonburi in Thailand. And we contacted him, and within minutes we were having a Skype conversation with him. And he told us, okay, I'm going with my gut. You guys are hired. You can come to the school. I think you start on Monday. And it was like a Friday. And that night we packed up our things and moved to the city to teach English.
Wow, that was lucky. And at least from your study that you had paid for but not got a certificate for, you had some knowledge of teaching English already.
That is true. We did somewhat learn some things from that.
Oh, that's awesome though. And then that job turned out okay.
Yeah, it did. We ended up teaching the entire semester, and it was like one of the greatest experiences we've had.
Brilliant.
Abroad, and it was one of the first too, so that was fun.
Yes. It's awful. I always find it so impressive when you have a really bad experience to start with, but some people will just turn around and go home. But then, yeah, a lot of people do kind of stick it out, figure out another way, and then everything turns out okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exactly right. And we were actually contemplating going home because we were just so scared and poor. We were like, we don't know what to do. Like, that's it. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, God, we got to go home. And then we eventually, like, calmed down for a second. We were like, we cannot just give in. We'll find something. There are just a plethora of teaching English jobs here in Thailand, and we'll find some. We can do it. And we did.
Well, yes, well done. And I think that's a very good attitude to have. So, and it's obviously paid off because that was the beginning of many more years of traveling the world. So.
Exactly. It worked out.
Yeah. Nearly everything nearly always does, doesn't it? You just got to have cross your fingers and hope and just close your eyes through the bad bits.
Yeah, exactly. We always have a little bit of freak outs during bad times or travel mistakes, but we always do try to remember that things always work out. We have our health, and as long as we have that and we're alive, that's really all that matters because we'll figure out a way to get out of it.
So Marilyn and Matt's unlucky beginning in Thailand certainly hasn't stopped them. They are still wandering the world as I speak, but I'm glad they managed to find a way to turn that bad start around. And as they say, be as diligent as you can if you're checking out a potential ESL course or anything like that. It's hard these days. The internet makes it easy to pretend to be lots of things you aren't, I suppose. So it is tricky to find the right way to go about things. But anyway, I think they made the best of a bad situation and it turned out to be fine. So my next guest today is Samantha Fisher, and she starts off with something that I think she might be right about, that in fact there really are no mistakes.
To be honest, I'm not sure I believe in travel mistakes.
Aha, I see. I have
Which
an
is
idea
kind of
where
an
you're
odd
going.
thing to say. I think that when we travel, even if you can classify something as a mistake, it just leads you elsewhere. It's not, and I mean, I get to speak from the wonderful experience of, I mean, apart from getting lost a few times, I've had incredibly positive travel experiences. I've never been robbed. I've never been assaulted, approached. I've been lucky enough to travel very safely, so I can have this view, and I realize that not everyone can. But I think, like, even in my most recent trip, I went to Spain for a conference, and I did 18-hour layovers in Stockholm each way.
Well, right. Nice.
Which ended up saving me money, like in that, I could either fly more direct or for basically the same amount of money, stay a night in Stockholm, which,
cool.
why the heck not? I'd never been.
Yes, absolutely. I would go too.
But because it was a very last minute trip and I'm not a very last minute trip taker, I did not book accommodation. I had been thinking, the timing of this and that, and when I arrive versus when I leave, maybe I'll just sleep in the airport. Which was quite silly of me because, when you're going to a 4-day retreat, you want to be rested. You want to
This is true,
know that you're going to be able to absorb all of these things and really participate in the workshops. So by the time I landed, I had only slept like 2 hours on the plane, and I thought, I need a bed.
Yes.
And that ended up working out really well. I was able to find, exactly what I needed, which was, by the way, was a very cool hostel on a plane.
A what? A hostel on a plane?
Yeah, so it was this huge jumbo jet. It's called Jumbo Stay. And
no way.
The rooms are like, typical hostel rooms, but like it's on a plane. So the windows are plane windows, and like it's very, very cool.
Oh my goodness. I have to tell my son about that, and he will want to go to Stockholm immediately.
It's really very fun.
That sounds super cool.
And like one of the wings has, it's like a deck with picnic tables just out on the wing of the plane.
No way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the cockpit is like the cafe, so.
Oh, this sounds fabulous. I'll have to look it up.
And anyway, so.
Sorry. I'm distracting you.
It's okay. I guess what I'm saying is, so even though I was thinking to myself, oh, what a mistake, I didn't book this accommodation and, now it's going to cost me extra and now it's this and now it's that. Well, really, it ended up that, I had this beautiful experience where I was trying to get back to the airport in the middle of the night. And I was standing in the rain, waiting for the bus, which was supposed to come every 15 or 20 minutes. And I didn't know if I just missed one. I saw a bus leaving. I wasn't sure if that was it. I was going, oh gosh, am I going to stand here in the rain for 20 minutes without a raincoat? And this guy who runs like a completely different hotel shuttle just pulled over and was like, I'm going to Terminal 5. Hop in. You don't owe me anything. Like, I'll give you a ride. I'm going there anyway.
Oh, how lovely.
And we had this beautiful conversation. He was from Iraq. I am from America. It was a very interesting, fascinating conversation that lasted all of, the 5.5 minutes that it took us. But in those 5.5 minutes, there was this, and again, if you don't reach out, I got into a car with a complete stranger, right?
True.
If you think about this, who just pulled up and said, oh, I'm going to the airport. He could have been going, I don't even know where. But like we talked about earlier, if I could have stayed in the rain and that would have hurt nothing and I would have caught the next bus. But, you take those risks. And in that moment, I said yes. I went with my gut. And I got to meet this great guy who we never even exchanged names. I don't know his name, but he asked me where I was from. I asked him where he was from. And we had a moment where we realized that we were like just these two strangers in a car going to the airport from these countries that are not friends. And that we were still smiling at each other. We were still in that conversation and it didn't matter. where we were from, you know?
Yes.
And if I hadn't,
fabulous.
made the mistake of not booking ahead, well, then I never would have had that moment. And I never would have stayed on a plane hostel, or
exactly.
So in that sense, I don't know that I believe in travel mistakes.
I think you're right. I think that very rarely does a travel mistake actually become an actual mistake. I think 99% of the time it turns into it's almost like fate, and it turns into a way more interesting experience than you would have had without the mistake. And I think the other travel mistake stories I've collected from people bear that out.
Yeah, I think too, a lot of it is mindset. If I had stayed in the mindset of, oh man, I can't believe I didn't book this, and now I'm paying, $20 more than I wanted to for a night. And, if I had stayed in that mindset, then quite possibly the other things wouldn't have found me. Or, I don't know if I really believe that per se, but the idea that because I went, okay, I didn't book ahead, I have to accept that, and this is where I am. And I absorbed that experience and just went, okay, so this is what it is. And now I get to, learn from it and be in this. And in that sense, I think if that's what a travel mistake is, then I love to make them.
Well, I have to agree that if Sam's going to make these kind of travel mistakes, then they have these kind of mishaps, then I think they're the right ones to do. The fact that she ended up, meeting someone interesting and staying in a hostel that's inside an aeroplane, how cool is that? I had to look it up as soon as I had heard about it, and I'm going to leave a link in the show notes. It's called Jumbo Stay. It's at one of the airports in Stockholm, and I'm already figuring out how I can go and stay there. Can you imagine how excited my son would be about that? And it just looks really fun. I love those unique things. Anyway, so if that's what Sam's travel mishap has led to, then I'm happy for it as well. Now, my final guests today are Elizabeth and Jeff Newcamp. You might remember them. They're living with their 3 kids in the Netherlands at the moment. And we had a great chat about various travel mishaps, because it seems that, well, they've had quite a few along the way.
We took this trip to Bilbao, Spain. Jeff had a conference there, and we thought, well, we'll bring everybody. And so we got the kids all ready to go. It was like, Daddy's going to be at this conference, and we're going to explore the city. But the conference was a week long, and we had rented this Airbnb, and we got there, and there was no hot water in the Airbnb. Oh no! It was like on this road where we couldn't get the cab, so they had to drop us off. We had to lug all this stuff back to the car. The Airbnb has no hot water. They moved us to another Airbnb, but we could only be there for a day. So we were already kind of set up to do this bouncing around. Right. And then Jeff's conference turned out to be pretty much all day. He would be gone, like early in the morning, and not home till after dinner. They had all these things at the conference. Whereas normally conference schedule is more like
more flexible.
Yeah.
And might be one dinner night or something, but otherwise you can get home and oh dear.
And I think I had grown a little bit like, oh, we travel so much, this isn't going to be a big deal. And I had not really done, I had a couple lists of things to do. Well, it turns out you're on that same schedule of like, things are open in the morning for about an hour or two, and then everything is closed.
Oh no!
Starting at noon till
4.
And
then they were open again 4 to 6, and then there was a strike while we were there.
Oh no!
Some of the attractions were closed, so Dad is gone. Mom has the kids, and she's moving Airbnbs throughout the week.
Yeah, with all our stuff,
and we don't have fixed activities, and half the stuff's closed.
I was pregnant and had the 2 littles, and there was like this one playground, and we found stuff to do, but then meals were so stressful because it was like at noon everything was closed, so I had to have everybody like at 11 we had to be in a restaurant, and then no restaurant was open again until 8 p.m. and the grocery stores were closed. If there were 2 of us, it was like we could have kind of divide and conquer, but
tag teaming. But
so it was just this total. It was like kids would be napping, and the naps would be going on, and I'd be thinking like, well, there goes our chance for food. So I I did find like a sketchy pizza place, and that was like open, and then
We had a lot of pizza on that trip.
And I found this vegan restaurant that was open for dinner. So the kids and I think they thought we had like moved there and we're just coming there every day. We would go into this vegan restaurant for dinner like every night.
Oh no.
The mistake I like to think about most was actually in Australia.
Oh, no.
We were renting a car to drive down the Great Ocean Road, and I had gone to rent the car. Elizabeth was at the hotel, and at the rental agency, they said, "Are you sure you know how to drive? Melbourne is confusing, and we have these trams, and
hook turns.
You're not used to these hook turns." And I said, "Don't worry, I'm a 20-something male. I got this." A little too much. And I was fine, actually, until I pulled up to the curb to pick up Elizabeth, who had the bags. And boy, did I hit that curb. And there went hubcap just rolling down the sidewalk in front of everyone.
Oh, no. Oops.
Well, and so we get the hubcap, and then as he pulls out, so he's picked me up, and I'm in the car, we've got the hubcap. As he pulls out, now he's on the wrong side of the road.
Oh, no. Oh, dear.
So, I was like, "Are you sure we're gonna make it?"
We should have just taken the car back to the rental car place.
We were okay. A bunch of times.
You obviously survived because you lived to tell the tale, but I can imagine.
Yeah, cars tend to be our sort of where things most go wrong. We had this idea to rent an RV. Here in Europe, we get a 2-week break in May, and we would just like drive around France in this RV with all the kids.
That was the idea.
Mm-hmm. And so Jeff finds a great RV. First, we have to find an RV that has enough like car seats for all of us.
Yes, of course.
Good enough car seats for all of us. Because here they're sort of like, that's you close enough. Like not everyone needs to be buckled in, but we're like, okay, we need to find. So Jeff finds this huge RV, and we set off, and it's fine. And we go to turn. We're doing these farm stays. We're gonna stay on these farms for free, where you can park and shop at the little local store. And the GPS tells us to make like a sharp left.
It was a sharp left. It was probably a 160-degree left-hand turn.
That's pretty sharp.
So we make the turn, and like the street sign is in front of us, and then there's a street sign behind us, and as he goes to do it, it's like we're...
Well, in the end, we were wedged between two signs on a hill, on a curve, blocking the only road into the town, and the ferry was about to leave.
Yeah, and there's like a traffic backup
behind us.
Jeff like puts the emergency brake on, and gets out of the car, and he finds out of the RV, and he finds this farmer who's in this field on this tractor, and he's like waving down the farmer. The farmer speaks no English. He's like motioning. He gets the farmer into our RV and asks him basically to turn it around. And in a second,
it was a snap. Just like that.
He just backs this thing out onto the road.
It was amazing. No. I think the lesson there was, if you see a guy driving an old tractor, that guy can drive anything.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So we had a bottle of Italian wine in the RV.
It must have been the most offensive thing you could give
to a Frenchman.
We didn't have anything else. We gave him that, and he told us that we didn't need to go down that road, that we should continue down the main road.
Oh,
it would take us to the same place.
Oh, no. Oh, what a disaster. That's hilarious.
That was the low point, I would think. Yeah.
I'm glad. Okay, there were other high points. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. It all got better from there.
Well, I did enjoy hearing about some of Elizabeth and Jeff's mishaps. I guess at the time they may have been less funny, but in retrospect they're hilarious. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I can definitely relate to the driving issues, and I think anytime we have to drive on the quote-unquote wrong side of the road, it's just a situation where you're prone to have more mishaps. I know even when I was living in Germany, I was pretty good at driving on the, for me, wrong side of the road. And I could easily do that on like a main road and stuff. But the tricky parts were always at roundabouts, especially smaller roundabouts, and if there's no other traffic there. And in car parks, for some reason, perhaps, as I reverse my car out of a spot, I'm not instantly remembering which way I should be going or which side of the road I should be on. But I never crashed or anything, so I guess that's all a good sign, right? But, travel mishaps happen very regularly, and honestly, they make for great stories afterwards and often give us a good laugh. And as Sam pointed out, they often lead to really interesting things. So do not be afraid to have some travel mishaps, misjudgments and misadventures. I think it's something to embrace and just all part of the ride. That's my idea anyway. So that's also my excuse for having quite a high number of mishaps, but don't tell anyone that. All right. Now, that is it for today's episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Let me tell you where you can find out more about these wonderful guests. First up, of course, a huge thank you to the sponsor of the show, Alistair McGuinness. So I'll leave links in the show notes so you can find Amazon links to all of his books. And his website is alistairmcguinness.com. It's ALISTAIR, Alistair, and McGuinness, McGuinness. So do look that up. I'm sure you'll enjoy his books. A big thanks to Matt and Marilyn from the Words with Winos podcast. I will leave links to the Words with Winos website. And of course, you can look up the Words with Winos podcast wherever you're listening to this. And every time I mention Matt and Marilyn, I think I really should adopt their little idea about recording their podcast with a bottle of wine. Maybe not a whole bottle just for me. That would be terrible, and you wouldn't understand a thing by the end. But the concept is a lovely idea. After that, we chatted with Sam Fisher, and you can find her on Instagram in particular at High Hopes Travel. And I have also left a link to that jumbo stay place at the airport in Stockholm where you can stay inside a jumbo jet, because that is super cool. Finally, I chatted with Elizabeth and Jeff from Dutch Goose, and you can find them at dutchdutchgoose.com. Now, if you have some mishaps to share so we can all have a good grin together, come along to the Facebook group. It's the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group. So either just head to Facebook and search Thoughtful Travellers, or there's a link in the show notes as well. If you're on Twitter, catch up with me at Amanda Kendall. Use the hashtag ThoughtfulTravelPod. And as always, all of these show notes and everything else is available at notaballerina.com/95 for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.